Welcome to this week's video on how to build an empire. So we are today talking about you've discovered or you've figured out what product that you think you want to kind of sell or go into business with. And now it's kind of time to talk about the different types of products because there's honestly a lot of different products and there's a lot of different ways that you can create a product. And so that's kind of what we're going to talk about today is like, how do you actually create the product? You have an idea in your head, but like, how do you end up getting it in your hands and selling it? So there's a few different models here, and we're going to kind of walk through each one individually. So the first one is going to be a variation of like manufacturing or private labeling. So this is where you will likely, I'm just going to go with assumptions here, likely work with an overseas supplier where you might order products from overseas. You might add some customization to them. So, for example, a dog poop bag, which is a business I'm starting, I am customizing the poop bags by color, by design, and then I'm going to do really fun packaging. So I need to find a supplier that can offer customization and can kind of do some of the things that I want to do. For some of you, you might not really care about customization. You might just want a regular poop bag that's like green with paw prints on it, and you're fine to kind of go with that. So you kind of have to have an idea of what you're looking for. But manufacturing or private labeling, for example, is going to be really where you take a product and you either create it from scratch, or where you find a product that already exists, which is what most people will do. So you might be looking to sell dog poop bags or dog toys, or I'm just going to go with the dog category, dog leashes or dog poop bag holders. They already exist and there's a lot of different designs out there. You would just find a supplier and then you would look at the ways that you can customize it. So private labeling is going to be probably the most popular form of like product. And it's probably what most people will do if they want to start an e-commerce business, depending on what kind of business you want to start. So again, some of the pros for this are going to be that you really have a lot of creativity and flexibility. So I would say in terms of creativity and flexibility, you can literally take a product that already exists like with ease. So a dog poop bag, which if you go to alibaba.com and you look at poop bags, they're all going to be green with paw prints or dog bones. They're ugly. So you have a lot of different options to choose from. And then you can take those and then look at the suppliers who offer customization and then kind of go from there. So really, really flexible and easy for the most part. The second positive of private labeling is just like the vast array of products. So anything you could ever want to sell. Let's say you want to do a swimwear brand. I mean, you can literally find bathing suits and goggles and shoes and not gym bags, beach bags and everything in between that you can then take and customize, add your own branding or color, and then you can have them shipped to you and then you sell them. So really, really easy. Some of the negatives of private labeling and again, some of the stuff that I'm giving you for information is I'm making assumptions. So I'm going to assume for the most part that you will likely have high MOQs, so minimum order quantity. So for example, the dog poop bag company I am starting, the MOQ for creating a custom product is 10,000 poop rolls. So that's a lot of poop bags. It's a lot of risk to gamble that, like to make a gamble like that, no, not knowing like, are people even going to want this? Do people like the color, that kind of thing? So you're likely going to have higher minimums if you're going to be doing any kind of private labeling and manufacturing. 100%, you're going to have high MOQs because you're creating a product from scratch. So just keep that in mind. The second thing is that if you are looking at a product that's big or fragile, that takes up a lot of space, you're going to have a lot of high costs from having it shipped overseas to here. And then, not to mention the cost to ship to customers. So just keep that in mind. That's a really important one. And then the second thing is time. If you're buying products from overseas, you have to factor in, you don't have the flexibility of picking up the phone and calling a company that's based in California, or if you're based in the US or in New York City and saying, hey, I need a box of this thing, ship it over to me. So you have to go by their time frame. So sometimes you have to order more inventory than you want to, or even can afford, just to make sure that you have enough to sell to customers. So private labeling is still going to be my favorite form of like getting a product in hand to sell, but it really kind of depends on what you want to sell and what your goals are. So what the second part of manufacturing is going to be like inventing your own product or creating your own thing from scratch. So this is where you're taking a product idea that you have that possibly doesn't really exist right now, or you're just creating your own variation of it that does not exist right now, and you're adding all of your own special touches to it. So the pros and cons for this are the cons are going to be, for the most part, when you're creating something from scratch, you have to find someone who can do a prototype for you, which could be expensive. Then you have to create your own product. So, depending on where you are manufacturing products or getting samples, that can be expensive and that kind of thing. So, it's always going to be cheaper to find something that already exists and then just slap on your own label, branding, that kind of thing. But creating something from scratch is always going to be more expensive. But again, if you create something that's completely unique, you've solved a huge pain point for customers. This could be a huge opportunity for you because you're doing something that no one else is doing, and you're going to really, really stand out in the market. The next type of, this is kind of leads into like business models in some case, but I'm going to talk about this because there are a lot of videos on YouTube in particular about drop shipping, and I'm here to bust the myths on the reality of drop shipping, and that it's not this like passive income thing that people kind of talk about because they're trying to sell you a course or something. So drop shipping it's a form of e-commerce for sure. And for some of you, it's a great way to get started. So if you are new to business and you want something that's flexible. So just to explain what drop shipping is, if you don't know what that is, drop shipping is basically you have, let's say, a Shopify store, for example, and you sell pet products. So you sell dog leashes and dog bandanas or t-shirts, and a customer orders one, and then a third party is going to ship that product out for you. So the pros and cons of that are, the pros are that you don't have to hold inventory, which is a huge pro. I mean, you kind of can't get around how great that is, that you don't have to ship out any inventory, and you don't have to hold okay, so you don't have to hold inventory, but you also don't have to like spend all the time to ship things out. And for me personally, that was one of the things I hated the most about my first product-based business, was actually shipping product. So those are two really good things. And then the third one that I think is really, really important is you don't it helps you get started easily. So I know when someone's starting a new business and they look at the cost of inventory, it can be really, really overwhelming and scary. And you're taking a risk on a lot of personal money that you don't know if people are going to buy your product. So I do think that with drop shipping, that you can test ideas, you can test products, and then if you realize, wow, people really like this one product that I have, then you can maybe work on private labeling it or getting product overseas, creating your own brand and that kind of thing. So drop shipping is really good if you're just going to start a generic store. You're going to start, like, let's say a kids boutique or a online pet store, where you're just going to then connect. You're going to use like a third party platform like Oberlo or one of those drop shipping websites, and you're going to connect all the pet products that they have, or you're going to connect all the kid products that they have that kind of fit in with the vibe of your store. And then basically, again, you have all these things that you can sell to people and you can test ideas. So there's a lot of positives with drop shipping, but the huge negatives are that you have no control. So that drop shipper that you work with, let's say you are doing really well with this specific kid product that you're selling, and then all of a sudden that drop shipper is like, sorry, we're not selling that product anymore. And then now you've just possibly lost your mainstream of revenue coming in, because that one best-selling product that you're selling so well is no longer available anymore. So keep in mind that there are negatives to not shipping your product. Shipping your product is annoying, but you have control. 100%, you have so much control. And if you run out of inventory, you stop selling it. Versus drop shipping, like, Or if you run out of inventory, you can actually still sell it while you're ordering more. You just have to tell people it's not going to ship for another, week or two or whatever. So with drop shipping, the lack of control is a huge negative. It's a huge one. Also, with shipping things out, you're not controlling that process. So the person who's shipping your product out, they might pack it really messy, or they might not put in the right order, and it's lack of control. That's it. I'm going to stop there because it's a huge one, and you just need to be aware that depending on what your goals are, that's a huge negative. The next one I want to talk about is low margins. So with drop shipping, there's a price to pay for someone else shipping your product out for you. So, there's only so much you can charge for a product where people will want to buy, but drop shipping tends to have lower margins than, let's say, a private labeling, because someone else is shipping the product for you and holding inventory. So just keep in mind, margins will be lower with drop shipping. And then there's something called print on demand. And this has become really, really, really popular, especially with the clothing space, like the clothing and apparel space, print on demand. So there's certain companies that are very similar to the drop shipping, but they're called print on demand. So one of my favorites that I've worked with in the past is Printful and Printify. So what they do is they have this really big catalog of things. And I think they're most known for printing sweatshirts, t-shirts, that kind of thing. Actually, this hat, I don't know if you can see it, the sunlight is really blindly coming in, but my hat says E-commerce Society, and this was created using a print-on-demand company. I wanted one for myself to wear when I record podcasts, and I ordered it from there. It literally took me 10 minutes to create, upload the design, order it, and it's really, really easy. So you could literally start an e-commerce business in a couple hours using print on demand. So it's really, really cool. But print on demand is really great for basically taking a design that you have. Let's say it's an SVG file or a PNG file that you could then slap on a specific type of product. So it's kind of similar to drop shipping. Drop shipping isn't customizing things, it's more the third party will ship a product out for you, like a poop bag or like a waterproof phone case or like a water bottle or things like that. Print on demand is actually taking a design, slapping it on a product, and then selling it. So really, really popular, especially with the clothing, apparel, hats, bags, things like that. Even posters and prints. A lot of people are using print on demand for that. So similar to the drop shipping, it's going to be a really similar situation. It's really easy to get started. You literally upload a design, you choose what product you want to sell. I want to sell a sweatshirt. I want the sweatshirt to be white and red. Done, done, done. Easy. You connect it and integrate it to Shopify or an Etsy store, and you can literally start selling. Even Amazon too. The pros of that are just easy to get started. I've had multiple print on demand stores. They're honestly super, super easy. You don't hold any inventory. And I think the most important thing is that you can test ideas. I love print on demand for testing. I will say one of the negatives is the quality. So if you order a sweatshirt from a shop that is selling things via print on demand, the quality is often really, really crappy. So it's really tempting to get sucked into someone saying, "Oh, I can help you make $20,000 a month passively through print on demand." And that's what people do. They try to suck you into these sleazy business models, and nothing is actually passive. Okay, so I'm going to be here to bust that myth for you. There's no such thing as passive. Okay, but it definitely is more passive than some of the other business models here that we're talking about. So print on demand is really good, especially if you're wanting to sell hats, sweatshirts, t-shirts with designs on them. Really, they make it so easy. But again, lack of control, low margins. The same thing as drop shipping. It's the same pros and cons. The pros of print on demand are that you don't have to hold inventory. They ship it for you. Easy to get started, easy to test ideas. The negatives are lack of control and low margins. And those you just can't you can't get around those, There's only so much you can charge for a sweatshirt. that people will pay for, But I will say print on demand it's a fun way to start a business idea, especially if you're wanting to do apparel or hats or something like that. So definitely an appealing business model. But again, if you're wanting this to be a big business that you sell quality products, you know, people aren't stupid. And if you sell them a print on demand sweatshirt and it's really shitty quality, they're probably not going to buy from you again. So just keep that in mind. And then the last one's going to be handmade. And some of these are kind of in between. Like, for example, if you wanted to start an apparel company, you would work with like a local, probably print company, or you would hand make them yourself using some kind of I forget what they're called, but like the printing machines or like an ink press or something. So you would either do it yourself or you'd have someone maybe in your area do it for you, or again, you can have them made overseas. But I'm kind of just giving you like the higher level overviews of the different types of products that you can sell. So handmade. So handmade is pretty obvious to what it sounds like. You are hand making it. So say you are someone who is making candles, or you are doing drawings of something, or anything that is handmade, like jewelry, earrings, necklaces, things like that. There's a lot of pros which are pretty obvious. The specialness, the special factor of a handmade product goes without saying. So if your goal is to sell in markets or maybe sell in boutiques or things like that, handmade is definitely a great business model. And for some of you, that's like that's really the only option to it. So if if that's what you're looking to do, then it is what it is. I would say the negatives of handmade are just like harder to scale. It doesn't mean that you cannot scale. It's just harder because you're actually hand making the product. Of course, as you grow your business, someone else can do that for you. But then, of course, having someone on your team who's making a physical product is time consuming. So just something to keep in mind. And then time consuming is another huge negative for handmade. But like there's something about handmade products that are actually so special. So those are kind of like a high overview of the four kind of types of products that you could sell. I could have probably combined print on demand and drop shipping, but they are two different things. And I wanted to kind of really give you a good overview of if you're thinking about doing a product based business, this is really one of the most important things that you need to think about is how am I going to get the product? Am I going to make it? Am I going to like have someone else make it for me? Or do I want a third party to make it for me and ship for me? So you have to really identify which of these is going to be the business model that you kind of go into. All right, now it comes into the next steps. So the first thing that you really want to think about here is like if you have a product idea in mind, which of those four areas make sense for you? Like, are you going to be making a handmade product? Do you want to try like a drop shipping or print on demand? Or do you want to private label or manufacture? So if you are, again, creating swimsuits, you're probably going to go down like the manufacturer sourcing, like overseas sourcing slash private label. If you're wanting to do a candle business, you're probably going to be doing a handmade business because there's not really that many other options. If you're wanting to sell really fun sweatshirts that fall under like a camping vibe or a camp brand or something, then maybe starting off with a print on demand makes sense. But in your head, you might also say, no, I want to create, let's say, I want to source my products from a local, like, let's say you're based in Seattle and you know that you want to create Washington based clothing. You want to work with a local supplier to make the products for you and you want to sell them because quality for you is the most important thing. So you would then probably not do a print on demand. You would actually find a local supplier to hand make the products for you. So you kind of have to have an idea of what product you want to sell and then which of those four makes the most sense for you. Again, I am doing a dog poop bag business. And so I'm actually going to be working with an overseas supplier. And my next video is going to be how do I source my product? So now that I've given you like the skinny and the rundown on the different types of, they're not necessarily business models, but they're ways of like getting or making the product. Like how do you actually get the product in hand? The next video I'm going to create is how do you find a supplier, because it can be really, really hard. So I'll talk a little bit more about how I found my supplier in the next video. But for my poop bag company, I am working with an overseas supplier, and I am basically private labeling. I'm going to take a product that already exists, and I'm creating my own color, my own design, my own branding, my own packaging for that. So that's what I'm going to be doing. And then a few other questions that I think are really, really important to think about when you are starting a product-based business. Your time, your space, or like your house, basically, apartment, your living situation, margins and profit, and then the quality of the product. So I'm going to kind of clump these two together for now. Is think about your time and your living situation. Do you have space in your house to house inventory? So that's a really important question. When I first started my first business, I lived in kind of a small house in California, and then I moved into a townhouse in Seattle. My husband had to sell his car to make space for inventory, and the entire downstairs of our townhouse, including the garage, ended up being like the warehouse for my business. It took over the whole house. My next business I'm starting, which is the dog poop bag company, I have a lot more space. We moved outside of Seattle. We have much more space in the house. And so having space to fit inventory is like no problem whatsoever. But for you, you might live in a studio apartment in New York City and you don't have any space. Well, then maybe starting off with like a drop shipping or print on demand makes the most sense for you. If you have a lot of space, then manufacturing or finding an overseas supplier or handmaking makes sense for you. You have more options. But if you don't have any space where you live and you're not willing to find someone else to house it for you, then that can be a problem. The other thing is your time. So having like shipping products and shipping inventory is time consuming. Okay, especially as your business grows and scales, it's a really big time expense that isn't fun to do. I would not recommend another way. Like in the end, I'm always going to recommend to you that you do a business that is scalable. I'm gonna use a little of my own like prejudice here. Um, a business that you control inventory, you control shipping, and all that kind of stuff. So I'll always tell you the best business model to do is one that you are getting your own products and you're shipping them out to your customers yourself. You're not using print on demand or drop shipping. However, it's a great way to start the business if you wanted to do those other things. You will learn so much by shipping your own stuff out, trust me. So, but for some of you, you might be like a digital nomad, or you might be living the van life, or you might travel constantly and you don't have time to like get products shipped to you, ship them out yourself, etc. So you have to really understand your limitations when it comes to these things and factor those in when you're starting a business. If you're someone who travels constantly, then drop shipping or print on demand is probably your only option, right? Margins and profit, again, your margins will be lower with print on demand or drop shipping. So if that's like the most important thing to you, just keep in mind that they will be less if you're doing those two business models. And then lastly is quality. So quality for me is a really, really important thing, which is why I don't do print on demand. Drop shipping, you can find good quality things. You have to sift through a lot of crappy products. But I'm a huge advocate of, getting samples, getting stuff from the right supplier, making sure it's good quality, and then shipping stuff to customers, which is why I don't really recommend like drop shipping or print on demand. But again, print on demand, I've got this hat using a print on demand company and the quality is good. So I've got sweatshirts that are terrible. I've gotten sweatshirts that are pretty good, and I've gotten hats that are great. Hats are great for print on demand. So that is it for this video. So those are your next steps. You want to kind of identify which of the four types fits in with my life, and then look at your time, your space, your living situation, like the margin side of things, and quality, and just look at how important are these things, and rate them like 1 to 10, and look at those numbers. And then if quality is the most important thing to you, then either handmade or finding a supplier overseas or even locally. It doesn't have to be overseas, but most people work with overseas suppliers because of the cost. It's just going to be a lot cheaper. So that is it for this video. The next video is going to be on how to actually source a product overseas. And I can't wait to share more details on my food bag business. If you haven't liked or subscribed, be sure to do that as well.